Good evening. Welcome to the Spiritual But Not Religious Show. I'm George Lewis. I'm your host for this evening's show. I've got a superb guest tonight. This gal is the real deal. I've just done a lot of research on the kind of things that she's doing. Her name is Denise Lascano, and she's a psychic medium. And there's a big difference between psychic and medium, which I'll explain to you later on. But before I get into that, Denise has written a book called The Messenger. It's not quite on the shelves yet. We're a couple of weeks away, I think. But I've read a couple of the chapters, and the book's excellent. It's going to be a real page turner. She not only is she a psychic medium, she's an excellent writer too. The next week's guest is her publisher, Chad Lilly. So if you're out there, you've been thinking you might like to write a book, or you've written a book and you've self-published it, and you're really not getting the kind of sales that you want, Chad's the guy to talk to. Been in the publishing business since 2000, so he's going to be an excellent guest also. His publishing company is Inner Circle Publishing, and Denise's book is The New Messenger. Let me see if I can get Denise up here. I guess I'll need some glasses. Okay, we'll push Denise on the air. Denise, have I got you there on the phone?
You do, George. Hi, how are you?
I'm great, and you're coming through. The audio's coming through great, so very good. I've been looking forward to tonight, Denise. I'm real excited about having you as a guest. Not only do we have a lot of things in common, but I was a broker, real estate broker in Fort Myers for many years, and I spent many hours on the beach down there in Bonita Springs where you live.
Yes, well, first let me just thank you for having me on. I'm really grateful to come on and talk about the book. And you're practically neighbors. You're not too far from me now.
Well, we're not. You can't leave Florida and get into that cold. Of course, it's been kind of cold here now too, hasn't it? Hey, listen, one thing though, you got to promise me is that you will send me a copy of the book when it's out, because I really want to finish reading it. I'm very interested in what you've done there.
George, I want to tell you, it actually is out now.
Oh, great.
You can buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Borders. You can go onto my website and you can buy a copy there. The reason we didn't have any to send to you right now is the initial batch that I received from the publisher to send out for promotions and things, we sold out. We had a lot of
good job.
They completely sold out. So we will be getting another order that I can ship to you at no charge next week. But
that'll be fantastic.
Else, if you want to buy them, they are available now.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, tell them your website. That's the best place for right now to go, isn't it? Your website?
If you go to my website, which is www.deniselescano.com, and it's DENISELESCANO.com, you will see the book cover right there in the top left-hand corner. And all you do is click on that cover. That takes you to Chad Inner Circle Publishing, their webpage for my book. And you can actually flip through, which you already did, the online version of the book. You'll see Chad Lilly's review. He does a wonderful video review.
I saw that.
Yeah, you'll see statements, all kinds of stuff on there, radio interviews, everything.
I'll tell you what, we got you up there full screen right now. I think you got a copy of your book there. Why don't you give our viewers a peek at that?
Will.
All right. Be sure and pick up a copy of Denise's book, The Messenger. So how about let's start off by giving us a little idea of who you are before we get into what you do, so that our viewers can really connect with you. A little short bio.
Professional psychic medium, and I've been doing this professionally full-time for about the last 5 years. As you'll read about in the book, I had actually a lot of businesses kind of like you.
Right.
I changed careers a few times, and I was actually a very reluctant medium. I did not want to be a professional psychic. I had gone to school. I had a career. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 27, and I loved what I did. I was very happy with it, but I also realized that I had a very unique ability and that it really was a powerful tool to help people. So I decided to start devoting, kind of like you would go to church. I committed 1 day a week, and 1 day a week turned into 2 days a week, turned into 4 days a week, and then the demand was so much that I really had to make a choice, and this is what I do now. And I read for people to connect with the purpose, of connecting with their loved ones, and also psychic readings as well, privately, by phone and in my office here in Bonita Springs.
Sounds like you're in the same space I am. You're doing what you do because you cannot not do what you do.
That is exactly it. I really cannot not.
Right.
And I talk about in the book a turning point in my life where I really made that decision. Something very pivotal happened to me, which I won't talk about. You can read it.
Right.
But it did. It really made me realize that it was not right to not use what I was given. And I think all of us kind of go through a thing, especially when we're younger, about not wanting to stand out. Psychics are not the most respected people. Let's face it. People make fun of us, and they call us frauds, and they call us fakes, and I really just didn't want to be that out there, but it just I'm okay with it now. I'm comfortable. Here I am. I'm really out there. So
Well, you're really out there, and you're doing a
Yeah.
great job too. From what I see, you're doing some really groundbreaking kind of stuff that I think is just marvelous. How about telling us a bit about your family life, where you came from, and maybe a little bit about your biological father? I thought that was like pretty interesting. If you don't, do you mind going there?
No, it's actually, I tell the story in my book.
Yes.
It's very interesting in that I come from an extremely religious family, very traditionally religious, Southern Baptist, kind of fundamental. And my mother still is not accepting of this, and she's not supportive of it, and really doesn't even discuss it with me. But even more so challenging than that was my father, who I didn't know very well after, toddler age. He spent his entire adult life in mental health institutions for the criminally insane. And this is back in the 1970s in a state hospital, which was not a nice place.
For
He
sure.
was diagnosed as being schizophrenic for hearing voices and, seeing things that weren't there. And he was put on a lot of heavy medications and shock treatment and all of those sorts of things. It was a sad life. He was in there for about 15 years, and when he got out, he eventually committed suicide. And to this day, he's still technically a missing person. I have never been able to actually locate him.
Well, when I read that, Denise, the thing that really struck me was he somehow or other connected to the same things that you're connected to, and just had no idea and no way to deal with it?
I have spent a lifetime pondering that, and
I bet.
I believe, and I write about this in the book, I do believe that he was. And a friend of mine had a great way of saying it, where a medium is in the driver's seat of the car with the spirit world, and a schizophrenic is like in the back seat. And I do believe that my father was mentally ill, and I do believe he had a very traumatic childhood, that people can become fragmented and personality-wise disjointed. And he also, he did a lot of drugs in the 1970s, and a lot of people try to self-medicate these issues, which makes it worse.
Yes.
And I believe that he was. I do believe that he was mentally ill. I think it could be a very confusing way to be if you're not pretty, strong in yourself and stable.
Stable is the key too, isn't it? It's like you really, and I've talked with a lot of psychics, and even there, sometimes you don't see a lot of stability. One of the things that I was impressed with you is that you are really solid, and that when I've listened to a couple of your interviews and a few things, listened to you talk, and you really know what you're doing. And I'm just sure you just exude confidence for people when they're getting readings from you.
I appreciate that. I do. I just have to tell you that I was not always that way.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm midlife now, and I've worked really hard to get here. But I was a pretty wild young girl. I moved to Key West right out of college, and not wild in a destructive way.
Right.
I never had real bad tendencies, but I definitely was a free spirit, and I tried a lot of different personas on. Adventurous, a bit
Right.
impetuous, I think.
And had a good time, I bet.
I had a great time, and I don't regret any of it. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about people. And I think one of the ways I'm able to connect with so many people is I've personally experienced, a lot in my own personal life. It makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. I think we really have to have that to be able. some of this deeper spiritual kinds of things that we get involved with, without the life experiences, it's kind of shallow.
It is. I always say true spiritual awareness cannot be learned by reading a book.
No.
It can help you, but you learn real spiritual awareness by the choices you make in your life. And I actually grew up in a family with such extreme religious, spiritual practices. It really turned me off, and I've worked really hard. I think it's important for people, even in the spiritual communities, you got to stay balanced. I try hard to be grounded and balanced in the real world. And I
Right.
always joke, I'm not a nun. I will go out on a Friday evening and enjoy a glass of wine or, whatever. I like to enjoy life. But you got to be grounded in the real world. We're here to learn. This is school. You don't have to be, a monk or a priest to be spiritually growing.
Yeah, I'm not sure that when you look at the monastery, people go there to get away from what's going on in the world. But I think what happens is once they get there, they have to deal with it even more strongly than they do out here. You put a whole bunch of those kind of egos all together.
Boy, you are so right. The spiritual community is full of really large egos.
Oh,
And, Spirit used to always just tell me personally that it is spiritually undesirable to be, spiritually perfect or to shield yourself. A lot of people approach spirituality by shielding themselves from all the, the temptations of the world. And what's the point of that? You come here to face all of those things, to learn and grow. And, I think it's important to be grounded and humble and just be a human.
yeah, I'm convinced that to reach real spirituality, the higher levels of spirituality, you've got to develop humility and compassion. And without those two things, you just don't have it all. Well, I think we're in spiritual kindergarten down here. What do you think?
I would agree with that. And, humility and compassion, wow, that's so huge. And you know what? You cannot have either of those things if you are really, really invested in your ego. And
No.
that's the biggest problem with a lot of organized religions, quite frankly, is there's too much investment in the ego.
Absolutely. So your family was fundamentalist Christian. Is that what I understand?
Part of my family, yeah. Part of my family of origin, my mom and my siblings, they are, and that's fine. I respect that. I don't have any problem, with that. To me, religion is simply a discipline. It's a spiritual discipline, just like a school that you would go to.
Right.
They, I think, really have a problem with what I do. The other part of my family, they're much more open. I mean, there's still a very strong Christian foundation in my family all the way around, but half of my family is much more open. I had a grandmother with a lot of abilities, and her grandmother or her mother did. So there is some, but my immediate family was pretty tough. It's still pretty tough, honestly.
Are you able to connect with your mother?
Not very well. Yeah, not real well. We're trying. I'm trying, but it's very challenging because the thing is too is people in those kinds of disciplines, they're very rigid and they're very closed and they're very fearful.
Right.
And although I work really hard to respect their beliefs and where they're coming from, because I think that's important,
Absolutely.
they don't. Those kinds of people are not particularly respectful of other ideas.
No, they'll come right over the top of you, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting to me about that, Denise, is that if you go into a fundamentalist church where they believe in prophecy and all, they're doing the same thing that we're talking about here under a different guise, and yet they, like this is of the devil kind of thing, So it's a little hard to understand, really, why there's such a schism there.
It is. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole Bible is written with prophecy and visions, and people, hearing voices from God or whatever.
Right.
It's well, I don't think those kinds of religions are really about spiritual growth. They're about control.
Yes, they
and
are.
They're very interconnected with politics. And it's about manipulation and control, and there's a lot of fear that is preached from those pulpits, which I'm really against. And I say the same thing about psychics. I mean, you can find psychics that will tell you all kinds of doom and gloom stories, and there's an evil energy around you and all these scary things. And I say the same thing. If you encounter a spiritual person like that, you need to run in the other direction, because the bottom line is my experience with the spirit world, with loved ones on the spirit side, with anything connected with that side, is there's no judgment. There's nothing to be fearful of. It's unconditional love, compassion, and forgiveness, and that's it. All the fear and all of that stuff exists here in this world, not over there.
And I think that's the real barometer, the real test for, at least for me these days, what I'm going to get involved with. If it's got love and if it's got compassion, it's got kindness, then that's my ball game. But anything other than that, the fear stuff, it's like, that's the other direction.
You can find any religious practice, whether it's Muslim, Buddhism, Christianity, and you will find people within those disciplines that are preaching fear and hatred.
Absolutely.
And you can also go into the same disciplines and you can see them preaching love. And the bottom line is, the discipline you choose is like choosing a different major in college here at school, where we're all, in kindergarten. If it's the message is what's important, and the discipline is really more personal preference. And I don't know why, but people get very, very caught up more in the politics of religion. To me, politics and religion are just about the same thing. They're pretty interchangeable.
They're pretty close. I think the connecting link in all religions is the mystical component. The mystics, there's one in every, there's a component with every religion, and they're very much about the love and very much about the connection, and not about the politics that are involved with it.
Yeah, and in Christianity, Jesus was all about that.
All about that, totally about that.
And Spirit has always taught me since I was very young, and this isn't a new concept, but I've always really internalized this, that all paths of knowledge, whether it's in the religious community or in the scientific community, all paths hold a piece of the truth, like a piece of the puzzle. But there's no one religious path, there's no one thinking in scientific community that holds all the answers, that holds all the truth. You have to put all the puzzle pieces together to get a really full picture. And I write about that in my book. I have a whole chapter about that, actually.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we have to do that on our own, individually. We each have to make our own path, because I totally agree with you. It's like that, that's kind of the trap with religions, is there's just enough truth interspersed with all the other stuff that it makes it believable.
Yeah, and people get way too hung up on who's right and who's wrong.
Absolutely.
And I try to get people out of that thinking, because you said something that I am always teaching, and you're obviously in the same wavelength, is that this is school. Earth is a metaphorical 4 years away at college. We come here to learn, and we can all choose different, classes to major in different electives, and somebody might be an art major and somebody's a science major and somebody's, a teacher, whatever. But at the end, we all graduate and go home. And it's a huge campus, so some of us are here in kindergarten and elementary school, and some of us are in high school. And then you have a few of us that are here, doing our doctorate or maybe teaching. And but nobody's right or wrong. You wouldn't tell a second grader that they're wrong because they're doing second grade math, and you're now in high school and you're doing algebra. They're just expansions of the same theories.
And I think one of the things that makes that the easiest to deal with and to understand is to realize that everybody's doing the best they can with what they have spiritually at the moment. When I keep that kind of an attitude, that kind of a viewpoint, it just makes everything kind of click better. I don't have to get into that critical part of that it's so easy to fall into. So I'll tell you what, tell us what's going on in your life right now. It looked to me like you've got just all kinds of, you're doing an awful lot at this point. Why don't you share a little bit of that with us?
Well, I still have a private practice, so I have an office here in Bonita Springs. I read for people in my office and all over the world by phone.
Uh-huh.
Of course, The Messenger just came out. It came out literally the first week of March. So that is a huge part of what I'm doing right now, which is just promoting and doing a lot of interviews and a lot of book signings, and we are putting together some seminars and some classes around the country where we will be going. And
did I hear some talk about you being on the Ellen DeGeneres show? Is that in the works there?
We're trying for that.
Uh-huh.
My publisher, Chad, that you will have on next week, he has a real campaign to get me on Ellen. I really wrote my book for the masses. I wrote it for the mainstream.
Right.
I want my book to be able to cross all barriers of religion, of culture, and really connect with people on a soul, on a personal level and open their mind. And we thought Ellen would be a really great, fun, open platform to try to talk about the book and the message.
I'll tell you what. In the couple of chapters I read, you certainly you've hit that mark for yourself. I mean, you know the personal things you bring out in your own life and where you were at. Just it makes it very easy to connect with you. So it's quite a book. Let me tell our viewers one thing. If you're here live, you're going to see. You're not going to be seeing so much of me. We will have our guests will be showing. But if you come back for the archive version, the technology is such that you're not going to see Denise. You're going to see just me. So it's a good idea to catch our shows live. So Denise, you made an observation in your book that I hadn't thought about before, and that it was really pretty profound, and that is that about music defining us as groups of people. Would you expand on that a little bit? I think that was a real insight.
That's funny that you picked that. I went to, well, the whole story begins and ends with, it begins with me in high school in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
And I had a guy that I dated in high school, as many people do. And that man and his brother reemerged in my life about 2 years ago. Right at the same year, I was having a reunion, and I hadn't seen a lot of these people in 20 years or more. And he was a musician, so music was a big part of our life in high school, as it is most high school kids. And when I went home for the reunion, it really reconnected me with who I was then, that young girl in that time of my life. And, I just think people are really tribal. I guess I have a little bit of an anthropologist inside of me, and I think that we define ourselves in sort of tribal ways, and music is one of those ways. And there's themes of music all throughout the book. The chapter titles sometimes are titles of songs and quotes and all sorts of things.
Right. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. As I looked back and I thought about it in my own life, I could see it pretty readily that there was, music was definitely defining us. And if when you even remember times in your life, it's often with music. We have at about the last 15 minutes of the show, Denise is going to do some readings, and one of our people in the chat room wanted to know what you would need from them in order to do a reading.
All I really need from them, and I'm not looking at the chat room because it confuses me too much.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Talk on the phone and look at everything.
Right.
So, if they just have, since we have a very short amount of time, just a simple question.
Okay.
And their name, their first name.
Okay, great. So tell us, an awful lot of people really don't know what the difference between a medium and a psychic, and there's a kind of a huge difference from as I understand it. How about letting us know that the difference in those two, and tell us where you fit in that space.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of people now that are claiming to be psychic mediums, and they really aren't mediums in the sense of the word. Well, first of all, a psychic, if I'm reading for you, George, psychically, and you're sitting in front of me, you have an energy field that
right.
gives your physical body life, and I'm tuning into that and gathering all sorts of information from you, physical level, emotional level, mental level, whatever.
Uh-huh.
A medium has the ability to do that with people that are no longer in the physical body. They can tune into that same energy field of people that are just purely in spirit form. I do not consider people that are channeling, teachers and angels and all sorts of guides to be mediums. I mean, they are in some respect. We're all channeling from the spirit world. But a real medium really should be able to talk to your Uncle Harry and tell you that your Uncle Harry died of, a stroke and that he was in, the Navy in World War II.
Right.
Or, some really specific things about that person, about your family, maybe the nickname that you call your child or your favorite dog's name that's now passed over, things that are really evidential and proof that they are talking to a loved one. I hate when I hear stories that people go to somebody claiming to be a medium and they say really general things like, oh, your husband, he really loves you and blah, 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 blah. And, it should be very specific, very literal information that they're getting.
You know, one of the things, Denise, that I prior to reading, these two chapters in your book, that was on my mind was that as a psychic or as a medium, you have to be just proving yourself constantly to people, I'm sure. And one of the ways that you was really convincing to me was a story. I think the man's name is Paul.
Yeah.
How about telling us that?
That is one of my favorite stories. That happened about 5 years ago. And if you go onto my website and you click on that book cover, you can read that. And there's a statement from Paul on the publisher's page. If you go to the bottom of the publisher's page, you'll see he posted on my blog. I specialize, and I have volunteered my time for 5 years working with grief support groups, nonprofit groups
Right.
that handle sudden death, suicide, accidental death, which are homicides, drug overdoses, domestic violence, drownings, everything. And in these groups that I've done, the particular group that Paul was in a group that was for sudden death. And we took referrals directly from the Collier County State Attorney's Office and the medical examiners. It was completely confidential. I was not allowed to know anybody's name. I was not allowed to know the circumstances around the death. And the victim's advocate for the State Attorney's Office, who writes the statement for the foreword in my book, she was present for all these groups. Paul came to that group with his mother, and I tell that story. You can read it online. He was very skeptical. He was one of a set of twins, and the other twin had passed over. He literally came there that night because his mother heard I was coming to the group. He thought his mother might have, really kind of lost her marbles. And
Right.
he was worried that she was going to get, taken advantage of or disappointed by this phony medium. He knew I was a fake. He wasn't even skeptical. He really believed that, and he came to protect her. And his brother came through with some mind-blowing information. The fact that he came to the reading with his brother's wallet in his back pocket with a poker chip in the wallet that they got when they went on a trip to Las Vegas. And his brother in spirit tells a story that his mother had asked him to tell. There were little things that driving in the car, they each asked the twin brother to tell to prove it was really him. And a lot of people witnessed that reading. And like I said, Paul just posted that statement on my blog about 2 weeks ago.
Really?
And I could never contact him because I never knew his or his family's name. And he heard about the book, and then we put that statement on the website.
That's fantastic. That
Yes,
that was really captivating. That particular story. It's and I listen. If you're out there, even if you don't buy the book, do yourself a favor and go read the two chapters that are up there. You will thoroughly enjoy them. I guarantee you that. Let's talk about a bit about the work that you are doing. Like you've talked with 12-step groups and you talk with grief counseling, and boy, how did that start for you? How did you get involved in that?
Well, I'm really grateful, and I'm very fortunate for the work that I do. The foreword of the book is 3 statements written by a sudden death counselor, a suicide counselor, and an AA counselor and sponsor. These are people that I've worked with for 5 years. I've worked with other groups too. I actually got started because a mother came to read with me privately. Her daughter was about 17 and killed in a car accident. She went back to this particular suicide or sudden death group that Paul was in and told the group about the experience. And the group asked the counselor if I could come. They called me. They wanted to pay me, and I said I would only come if they didn't pay me. I would only do it for free. And the reason I did that is I knew that there would be people that would be skeptics and critics, and they would accuse me of victimizing victims.
Sure.
And I didn't want anybody to be able to say anything. I knew it was really important work. So I volunteered for 2 years. I went there every month. And the first reading went really well, obviously, and they kept asking me to come back. And then word got around because a lot of people go to different support groups. So another group would hear, and then they would invite me. And then the addiction group was interesting. I love doing that work. I'm a medical intuitive, so I get a lot of medical information. And the man that headed that group took some of my classes, and I read for him. He actually was also a twin, and his twin brother was lost in a fishing accident. And we just talked one night after class about how I viewed addiction and the way I saw it. and he asked if I would be willing to come and read for an AA group. And I did, and it went really well. I didn't know, I never knew how any of it would work. I have to say, I only do these groups with the counselor present. The counselor has to be there, and I do that because I am not a counselor. And that way, whatever information comes through in the group, the counselor can help them integrate that into whatever part of their healing process that they're involved in. And it's amazing because I'm the only medium that I know personally that I've heard of that works in the mental health community and works, I also work with suicide with the sheriff's department and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, it's the first time I ever heard of it, and I've been around 12-step programs for many, many years. I'm a member of several of them, so those of you out there wondering about anonymity, you can guess which one. And so much of what you're doing really, really caught my attention because I'd never heard of anybody doing that. When you're working with people who are addicted, whether it be to food or there's over 155 different 12-step programs. It's the steps themselves will help you with about any issue you want to deal with if you do the process that they offer, the technique that's offered by them. What do you uncover mostly with that? Somewhere along the line, and for this to be successful, the client or the person you're working with has to have some kind of benefit. What is that? What do you pull up for them that's most beneficial? Is there any one thing you can point to, or is it just a lot of things?
Well, first of all, I would definitely say read the foreword because there's a statement. He talks a little bit about that. I work with, I guess, first of all, when I started working with sudden death and suicide, I realized, and I'm really not exaggerating when I say probably 3/4 of suicide and 3/4 of accidental deaths are somehow linked to drug or alcohol use or abuse.
Right.
A lot of suicides have addiction problems. So in talking with the spirits in these groups, they started really explaining a lot about the addiction. I just started learning. One of the things that I talk about when I read for, say, an AA group or Overeaters Anonymous, everybody's addiction is different, but also everybody's addiction is basically the same.
Right.
The one thing that's really important is there's always a core issue. There's one or maybe a few very core issues that exist either in the emotional level or the mental level that a person is trying to avoid pain or just trying not to deal with, and they're using the addiction to do that. So I get to the root of that, because if you don't deal with whatever this core issue is in your personality, then what happens is you'll get off of alcohol and you'll develop a food addiction, or a sexual addiction is huge right now, or
yes,
a workaholic addiction, or a gambling addiction, or a religious addiction. So when I see somebody with addiction, I see patterns of behavior that will carry over in other areas of their life. It's a compulsive out of control behavior.
Right.
There are some people that are very physically addicted to chemical substances. Prescription pills is an epidemic right now.
It's huge, isn't it?
It's huge. So
yeah.
It depends, because if they have a really strong chemical dependency, of course you have to get them off of that and stabilize.
Right.
But if they don't really look at internally what is going on, they will, 9 times out of 10, it'll transfer to something else. And what I do is I come in, and wherever they are on their path, I illuminate the issue that, where they are right now, what they need to look at to move further. I will say I don't work with people, right on the front lines, the ER of addiction.
Right.
The people that I work with that they bring to me, say in the AA groups or the recovery groups, they have been in recovery for a while and they're somewhat, stable. And I'm helping them kind of get to the next level of healing.
Well, there's such a need there, because the amount of suicides that happen after people are in recovery, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I've even seen people who had 28, 29 years who put a gun in their mouth, and it's because they haven't dealt with those painful issues.
Well, and I gotta say that's twofold. Part of it is, say this is just an example. Say a woman starts drinking and she has a history of physical abuse or sexual abuse in her childhood.
Right.
And she's probably going to marry a man that is going to do the same sort of things, and she starts drinking. Okay?
Sure.
But the thing is if you're drinking for a long time, 10 years, or prescription pills, which are incredibly dangerous, in my opinion, much more dangerous than alcohol now, certain things happen to the brain chemistry that many times are irreversible. And
Absolutely.
like narcotics and alcohol, they affect the same brain receptors, and they affect them in similar ways. And they also block the production of our natural feel-good endorphins and hormones. And in many cases, especially with really chemical dependencies like methamphetamines, cocaine,
Crack.
heroin, narcotics, those chemical changes in the brain are many times irreversible, and they cause exaggerated depression. And that person will have to be likely on medication the rest of their life.
Yeah.
It's very sad. People are playing Russian roulette with their body chemistry when they start taking these drugs. And I'm on a huge crusade right now about prescriptions because there is not a week that goes by, and I am not kidding you when I say that I am not reading for a family that has lost somebody to an accidental prescription pill overdose, or a person that had an aneurysm or an embolism because they're mixing pain pills and antidepressants.
Yeah, and that is such a hidden subculture, the prescription drugs, because, and the folks who are doing those drugs, they really don't see themselves as being drug addicts because, well, hey, listen, my doctor's prescribing. And I mean, there are those that go work the doctor, but, so and they're caught long before they realize they even have a problem. But Denise, one of the things that I see so much of is the amount of suicides that don't look like suicides, accidents that happen out there on the road that are really suicides. People who are impaired, from whatever they're doing. The thing that concerns me most around this drug use is some of these new drugs. A kid only has to try that once or twice and they're hooked.
Yeah. Well, Vicodin and Percocet are the two most prescribed narcotics.
Right.
And if you don't know, those are heroin. They basically are synthetic heroin. They're an opiate. They're addictive in as little as 2 weeks. And if you're on them for months and years at a time, chances are you've altered your brain chemistry to the point that may not be reversible. So I am really not exaggerating when I really believe 3/4 of the suicides, and I've been working with the suicide group for 5 years every month.
Right.
I deal with a lot of suicide. Probably more than anything I do is suicide.
Uh-huh.
And I would say 3/4 of those people are either on drugs, or they're coming down off of a drug, or they're in withdrawal from drugs, but there is some history there because it messes up the brain chemistry. So then they have to be on some sort of an antidepressant. The problem is you are giving addictive personalities drugs, and it doesn't matter whether it's a prescription. And you are exactly right, because what that person in their mind will do is they will justify it, and they will say, well, it's not an addiction because it's being prescribed by a doctor. And
Absolutely.
It's not true.
Absolutely.
And it's very sad. A lot of people really, they don't understand. They don't realize that this is really affecting their brain chemistry. And that's why that's why you're seeing 20 and 30-year-old people dying all the time. That actor just last week, Vicodin was in his room. I can't believe it's legal. It's astounding to me.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and tell me, when you do a suicide reading, when you're trying to help someone, do they always know that it's been drug related, or are they in some kind of denial when they come to you?
The spirits or the family?
The family.
Yeah, actually that's interesting because no, a lot of times they don't know. Either they have no idea or they're totally in denial. The wonderful, thing about prescription pills for an addict is there's no odor, there's no empty bottles, there's no illegal paraphernalia, and they're very easy to hide. And even if they're not hiding them, if your wife has prescription pills in the medicine cabinet, you're probably not going to think twice about them.
Don't even know they're there. You don't notice.
Yeah. And I have literally done readings. There's one mother who really comes to mind. Her daughter, she fell from a building. She was 16 years old, and they deemed it a suicide.
Wow.
And I knew that it wasn't suicide after talking to the daughter in spirit. I knew that she was high on pills. She was sitting on the railing with some kids, and she fell. And the way that I proved to the mother that I was right, this was literally 2 weeks after the girl died, I told her there's Ritalin. Your daughter was taking Ritalin, really high amounts of it, because the kids nowadays, they peddle these drugs and they get high on them and they buy them in school. The mother said, no way, no way, my daughter, she does not do drugs. It takes about 2 to 3 months to get back toxicology reports. When the toxicology report came back from the medical examiner's office, she called me on my cell phone and she said, oh my God, you were right. But why that was so important for that mother is that mother believed her daughter died of suicide right after they got in an argument, and that mother was devastated
Oh,
and
wow.
suicidal herself. So for that mother, even though it was still horrible and a tragedy, but to know that her daughter was high and fell actually was somewhat of a relief to that mom that her daughter didn't just take her own life. And that, me being able to give that specific of information, and then the medical examiner coming back with the evidence proved to her I was talking to her daughter. And it also allowed her to receive a lot of other very healing messages that her daughter brought through that she needed to hear. And she's doing well now, that mom.
One of the things that I don't remember whether it was in the book or I just heard one of your interviews or what, that you have reached a point where that kind of scenarios happen for you so often, where you run into a block. They don't really want to believe what you're saying. It's kind of like they're in such denial. And then 2 or 3 months down the road, when the toxicology report comes back, it backs you up. That's really built your confidence, hasn't it?
Yeah, the groups have been phenomenal for me. I've done them for 5 years, and when I first started doing the groups, you have to realize I'm doing these groups with people that would never go to a psychic. They would never go to a metaphysical store. Many of them are atheists, they're agnostic, they're Catholic, they're Jewish. They are nothing. They're just people who have had some tragic thing happen to their family. They may not even believe in what I do. They're only there because somebody told them I can help them.
Right.
So I get a lot of resistance in those groups. And they're people in tragic, horrible, painful circumstances. And many times I would sit there and people would go, no, that's not right. No way. That never happened. The counselor is sitting there. And the counselor would call me 2 months later and say, you know what? We just found out that everything you said was true. Or she finally admitted that, yes, what you said was true. And it did build my confidence. It made me, and if you ever have a reading with me and you tell me I'm wrong, I will be pretty insistent, that maybe I'm wrong, but just don't dismiss it. Hold on to it, because something's probably going to happen. I've just learned if spirits, it's not me. I'm just a translator. I'm literally telling you what somebody's telling me. And if they are telling me, I believe them, I trust them, and they're always right.
I really hear that. I want to kind of we got about several people who want readings, but before we go there, I want to talk about one other thing. In the I don't know if it's the forward to your book or whether it's the people who are praising you in the beginning of the book. I think it was the AA guy talked about Carl Jung and the saying spiritus contra spiritum. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You want to tell our viewers a little bit about what that means and what the implications of that are?
Oh my God! You know what? You're putting me on the spot. I'm not sure. I don't.
Okay.
Remember.
Well, let me help you with it. All right, because I do know. Carl Jung had gotten a letter from the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, and in that letter, this was in like 1961, he had thanked Jung and told Jung that he should have been called a co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, because he set a domino effect in play with one of the men that he had been trying to treat. And I won't go into the long story of it, but on Jung's return letter to Wilson, what he said was that this alcoholism stuff is. He said he called it spiritum contra spiritum, which meant that that same word is used for alcohol or for the highest of religious experience.
Yeah.
And what he was implying was that this drug thing, this alcohol thing, these things, they're kind of in a way a search for God, looking for that union with God, and it gets pretty misguided. But it's very powerful at any rate.
I believe that. I think Earth is a heck of a place. I mean, we're in a battlefield down here. This is literally
For
a
sure.
war zone. This is the boot camp of the spiritual universe. And from what spirits tell me, it's one of the most primitive places to come and experience life. So it's, this is hell. It's hell down here. And the energy is filled with fear and pain and negativity and manipulation and violence. And I think people, when they go for drugs or alcohol, they want to escape. They're trying, I believe, to raise their energy to connect with that. And let me tell you, many times people on drugs are connecting with spiritual realms. They really are.
Absolutely.
One of the things I think that happened with my father, because it was the 70s, he was experimenting with a lot of drugs then. And I always, when I teach classes, I tell people, never ever do any of these things that I'm teaching you when you're, don't think you're going to drink a glass of wine, you're going to smoke a little pot, and you're going to, do this. No way, because your guard is down. You're not. You got to be in your full content. You've got to meditate. Raise your vibration. The problem with those drugs is they make the veil much thinner so that you can actually kind of have spiritual experiences, but they lower your personal vibration of energy.
Right.
So the likelihood of the spiritual energies that you're going to attract are going to be lower spiritual energies. And I do believe that that is exactly what happened with my father. And, and like I said, I'm no nun. I especially when I was younger, experimented with a few drugs.
Sure.
And I drank, and, I did all the things college people do. And I look back on it now, and I think, knowing what I know now, I would never do some of the things that I did. No way. No, I would be afraid now.
Well, I think Denise, that's the reason that the 12-step recovery programs have whatever success they have, is because they do take you to a place where you begin to experience that higher spiritual connection. And with that,
what's wonderful about 12 steps, and it's so effective, is that, and somebody told me this once, because, and you read a touch of it in my book. I don't say a whole lot of the things that happened to me out of respect for my family, really. But, my upbringing was challenging. It was difficult. It was painful. But who better to walk back into the darkness and lead somebody out into the light than somebody that's already walked through it?
Boy, that's for sure. Absolutely.
And that is why the sponsors of AA work so well, because you can go to college and you can learn all about AA therapy, and you can sit with a group of addicts and teach them, but unless you have walked that walk and been an addict yourself, either they're not going to take you seriously, or you're just not going to have a real grasp of what people are dealing with.
You're absolutely right there. Listen, I wish that you and I could talk for another hour, but we're running out of time. We got some people want to get some readings. Would you like to get into doing some readings at this point?
Sure.
Okay, good.
What kind of time frame, like?
Well, we got about 10 minutes. So,
okay.
What do we? How many do we have?
I've got 3 people.
All right, so you can kind of figure from there. 3 people in about 10 minutes. So.
Okay. Hey, Denise, how you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Okay, I've got Nancy has asked a question. Her husband passed about a year ago, and she wants to know if her husband Charlie is okay and happy where he's at, and if he's out of pain now.
Okay, you're gonna have to relay for me, because like I said, I'm not in the chat, and I'm wondering if Charlie has a motorcycle, because the very first image that's coming through to me is a motorcycle. And if he didn't, I've got somebody here with a motorcycle, a male.
Yeah, I don't believe I believe that he was sick.
Okay, but before that, when he was younger, did he enjoy having a motorcycle or ride a motorcycle? I'm seeing a motorcycle in a garage, or I'm wondering if maybe she has a son or somebody right now that has a motorcycle he's trying to acknowledge.
I don't think with this one at all, Denise. No.
Okay. I may be getting somebody else, one of the other callers, so we'll see if that comes up.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Charlie was a cancer passing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. From what I understand, he was a very strong individual his entire life, and went very quickly.
I'm also getting Charlie at the end of his life. I'm seeing him on a ventilator. I'm seeing a tube in his mouth helping him breathe. He's talking about his lungs going bad. I don't know if he starts off with lung lung cancer, or definitely winds up with fluid or pneumonia in the lungs there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, and Nancy, I guess what she's wondering, Denise, is she's wondering is he in a happy place now? Is he out of
He is in
pain?
a happy place. He's surrounded by family. I'm going to say this again, Nancy. I really believe that this motorcycle person is connected either with you or your husband. He's standing next to your husband. This is somebody that's passed over. So this is a male that's close in age to your husband. I think that he is either maybe a brother to your husband or a good friend of your husband in the past.
Well,
And I think it's like a Harley Davidson motorcycle.
Well, she said something about a cousin, Charlie, passing, or somebody else. Not Charlie. A cousin of hers passed just about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that, because she also
Tell
mentioned.
her to, ask around your family, Nancy.
Okay.
Ask around your family and just kind of think on that because I'm going to tell you something funny too. This guy was a beer drinker. The guy with the motorcycle was a beer drinker, and he's a little bit of a biker guy, but not like a hardcore biker guy. He literally is showing me. Somebody showed me a can of Pabst Blue Ribbon. I don't know if they still even make that. An aluminum can of beer. So.
Sounds like my relatives.
Right. All of ours. Huh?
That's a problem when you get on the TV and you've got people in chat and people in the room. But I've definitely got this guy here with the Pabst Blue Ribbon can of beer and the motorcycle. I got to tell you too, he showed me something about the seat of the motorcycle. He had a big fuzzy sheepskin cover on the motorcycle seat.
Interesting. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, our
But
second.
her husband is fine. I've got him there with family.
Good. I'm sure that'll give her some peace. My second one is Bonnie. She says.
Hi, Bonnie.
She says my mother and son both passed within weeks of each other. My mother was full of fear. She thought it would all end when she died. I would like to know if she got past that, and also my son. Where's he at, and just what are they thinking, and do they have any advice to give me?
Okay, the first person that's coming through really strongly to me is her mother, and I'm just going to describe her real quick. I get her mother is not only fearful, but being a pretty stern individual in life and a lot of negativity. I also get her is she's kind of harsh. She seems like she was a real critical kind of personality in life, and she's not like that now. She's actually wanting to apologize and saying she's sorry about that. A lot of her critical personality and a lot of her negativity was the internalized fear, and she got really cynical about life. And so she's talking about something going on, and I'm going through this really quickly because we don't have time. She's talking about something going on when she was young, when her mother was young. I'm getting around the age of early to mid-20s. I believe there's either a failed marriage or she marries somebody because she gets pregnant, and it's just not a happy situation. I don't think that marriage lasted, actually. But it kind of just, she couldn't let things go. She couldn't let things go. She worried all the time. I think her mother also had cancer because I get this whole, kind of getting eaten up inside feeling. I believe Mom passed first. And I have her son there also. The thing I'm hearing about her son is it would be really, really emotional for her to have a reading with her son right now, especially over this public way. So what I would say is if the things that I said about Mom hit home and you feel that it connected, I would probably say call me privately to talk about your son because that's a much more intense reading. But he's okay and he's with Mom. I'm seeing a couple of little dogs. The son is showing me some dogs, and I don't know if this is the lady that I'm reading for, dogs, or if this was her mom or her son's dogs. I'm seeing like 3 little dogs, actually. I'm seeing very specifically a dachshund.
You're probably seeing my 3 dogs here.
Am I? I'm seeing like a little, it looks like a little Poindexter dachshund dog. And then I'm seeing a little moppy, shaggy dog that's either like a Shih Tzu or a Maltese or something, kind of like a floppy lap, like a hairy lap dog, which is white and tan. Does this sound familiar to you?
That's George's dog at my feet. Because Bonnie's here in the
His wife had.
Oh, Bonnie's in the room?
Bonnie's
Yes.
in the room with
Oh,
us.
so I got you all in the room. So, it's like doing a group reading, and I can't look at you guys, so I don't know who this is for. That's why I'm just kind of giving it to you.
Yeah, that's why we wanted you to know, some of the surroundings here. So,
Bonnie, is any of this making sense to you about Mom?
He did leave his. Oh yes.
Is she saying yes? I can hardly
she's
hear.
saying yes. She's saying yes. She doesn't have a mic.
Okay.
It was his best friend.
And he had a dog who was his best friend. So you're hitting pretty strong
Yeah,
there.
Mom is good. She's talking about, she really feels sorry for how she's been, how she was. I don't think she was a bad mom or anything, but I think she could be tough. She could be critical, and she definitely walked around life with a big dark cloud over her. And it really colored the energy around her and it couldn't help but affect your relationship because there was just a lot of negativity there. But you were right. I mean, it was all rooted in fear.
Bonnie's nodding her.
Very
Bonnie's
religious, but I also get this kind of like almost like a stern.
Whenever I went home, there was a big cloud over my house.
She says anytime she went home, there was
Yeah.
a big cloud over her house, and
Was
it
she?
was,
I don't see her husband or the dad in the picture there for a lot of the end of her life. Is that right?
was the father in the picture, Bonnie?
Is she single? She's living alone.
She's
He passed along about 30 years ago.
Yeah, because I see her, without him for a long time at the end of her life.
She's on delay.
And she lived alone.
What's happening here, Denise, is that Bonnie is actually getting a delay. She's watching on another system, so
Okay.
she's not getting it live with us.
Okay.
It'd probably be better. You know what? This is such a poor situation for you to be in. I think you've done marvelous just being able to connect with what you've connected so far. If anybody who's thinking about a reading with you, if they go online and they read just a little bit about the people that you've dealt with, what they have to say, read a little, those 2 chapters in your book, they'll be grabbing for the phone. Just no doubt in my mind about it. The work you've done has been marvelous. Listen, we've got about 2 minutes left. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you an opportunity in case I didn't bring something up that you would like to say specifically. Anything that you'd like to bring in that we haven't talked about?
Well, you can find out really almost anything you want to know about me on my website, which
Right.
is DeniseLascano.com. I also I write all my copies, so there's a lot of information there. If you have questions about all sorts of things, read my blog. There's a lot of information on my blog. You can connect with my YouTube channel on my website. I just added 5 videos in the last 2 weeks. There's a lot of information on my YouTube channel, and you can find a lot of just free information there. You can also, of course, please buy my book if I'm interesting you at all. The foreword of the book is amazing. It's written by these counselors. There's nothing else like it. I'm very proud of the work that I do. And, I just really want to thank you guys for giving me an opportunity to come on and talk about my work and the message, that I'm trying to get out, which is that this is not the end of life. When we die, it's not the end. It's just a part of life, and that our loved ones, they're not just around me. When I'm here doing readings, they're around you, and I talk all about that and explain that on my website and in my book.
Well, I'll tell you what, Denise, one thing is certain. I have become one of your admirers. I will definitely be sending people your way. I hope somewhere down the road we do another one of these. I've totally enjoyed tonight's conversation. And I'm going to have to let you go at this point. So thank you for taking an hour out of your time to spend with us. We've liked it a lot. So we'll talk with you again in the future.
Thank you again so much. It was a great time, and I would love to be on again anytime. So let me know.
That sounds great. Bye now.
Bye.
Wow, Tom, she was a great guest, huh?
I really like Denise.
Yeah, right there. Well, we're out of time, so What I would suggest that you do for the remainder of the week is to accentuate the positive and have a fantastic week.